Welcome to episode 115 for the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Matt Christian, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty, and I'll be your host for this episode. Dillon Smith is a land real estate agent out of Crescent, Oklahoma. We talked to Dillon about 1 year ago about selling land. At the time, Dillon was a brand new agent. Now, 1 year ago, we're laughing about how Dillon had acquired his first sales through other agents in the company referring them. And you should go back and listen because the stories are fairly humorous. And how he was learning how to scrap his way and learn the ropes. In a short amount of time, Dillon has cracked well inside our top 100 agents. And in case you're curious, we have around 430 agents currently sitting in the company. This is a lot of progress for a brand new young agent. He's currently listing around 20 properties in Oklahoma. Now, this is a chance to touch base and discuss his journey and tell some hunting lies and even talk about my fear of poisonous snakes and tornadoes. Now, sit back and enjoy. All right, so I am sitting here with Dillon Smith, and you all have missed out on like I would say a good dose of conversation. We've been telling lies about hunting. So we've been talking our way through it. But Dillon Smith is an agent out of Oklahoma, and he's been on the show before. Actually, you came onto the podcast when I think you were a sparkly brand new agent with us.
1 year ago, brand new.
Yeah.
I think I had maybe like 4 or 5 sales underneath me, and honestly, not a whole lot of education. So
Yeah,
that,
so you were just getting it in gear. So you, okay, you have a background in your degree was in science. You were in
yeah,
molecular biology,
yeah. Well, it was chemical biosciences was
chemical
my degree.
bioscience. Okay.
Tried to do the pre-med route, didn't end up making that happen. Decided to sell land. Kind of did a full 180, and super glad I did. But yeah, you've got the background, the gist of it. Um, but yeah, no, we've been talking about deer, and I don't have any deer this year on camera, and I'm kind of bummed about it. So I just tell stories from years past, so I can relish in that because I have no target bucks right now.
And I always get really jealous of anybody in the Midwest that talks about stuff like that because for us, it's like, I'm gonna go run through a mountain and see if I see something. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, you can set out a game cam in an area that you think it is, but good luck. I know plenty that do that, but maybe I'm just too lazy to put out a game cam. That's what it comes down to, is I'm too lazy.
yeah, we used to never do it. My dad does not like, or used to not like knowing what was out there. He liked going and sitting, every single weekend and seeing what would show up. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do this myself, put out 3 trail cameras. We have like a little over half section, not far from where we're at. And then I would show him pictures of the bucks that were walking around. And he's like, all right, maybe I should buy some of these cameras. And now he's got access to every single one of the cameras that I do. So
I did.
we share pictures.
I just say my one joy with game cams is my mom lives up in the mountains and it's the house I grew up in and she's still up there and she's only got 5 acres, but her house backs up the back line of the property is National Forest Service. So it's wide open in back of it. So it's access to all that. And so she has this set of whitetails. There's 3 bucks that are cruising her property. And I of course have the Wi-Fi access to her camera because I check the camera I think more than she does. And there's this huge like for our area. It's a large whitetail for our area, which is nothing to the Midwest deer. But this big whitetail is going to her house every single night at midnight, and
Oh
it's
man.
gone by the time the sun rises. So I've had to watch this thing the entire year show up every night eating her sunflowers, which she wants to eliminate it because of that. But I can't do anything about it because it's the middle of the night. So it's like I've had this torture all year watching this deer.
The majority of the Midwest giant bucks, the bucks that survive past 4.5 years, um, they will not show up during the daylight, until it's rut, or they'll mess up, once or twice. I have a good friend that Luckily, he got it done, but he had a giant, like the biggest deer, had to have been one of the biggest deer in Kingfisher County this year. And he had him on camera. He passed him last year, had him on camera for, the past months. And he was showing me one day we were at lunch, he was showing me trail cam pictures, and I was like, man, you got to quit showing people that. Like, too many people know where you hunt at. So to be
Where you're gonna
showing
have the
it.
camera up and you see the buck walk by on camera, then you see the guy with the bow walk by after it.
Yeah, exactly. So 2 weeks after hunting deer season starts, I'm texting him. I'm like, hey, where's my picture? Where's the dead deer? Where's your picture with the buck? And he's like, man, he has not daylighted, and I have not, I don't know if he's still out there.
Oh
And so
no.
he was hoping and praying that he hadn't shown too many people, but he ended up getting it done right before, like 2 days before he took a big trip out of state. So he was pretty happy. It was an awesome buck.
That's
But
perfect. That's perfect. Well, so we're here today. We're going to talk a little bit about some winter prep. Dylan here is how many, 4 generations back, 3 generations back farming, 5 generations back, five.
yep, generation number 5 of
So
wheat here in
so his
Oklahoma.
family started farming out of the Mayflower and got got working in the Midwest. No, so that's crazy. Okay, so 5 generations back farming. You guys run cattle. You guys work with, has it always been wheat, or is that
Yeah, every so often on certain, parcels we'll rotate it with a canola or something, but for the most part we're doing winter wheat. So planting, right about now. The goal is to have everything planted by the 1st of November. Um, Obviously there's been years where we've had to go past that. But we're trying to get it planted 1st of November, and then we'll harvest it sometime in end of May, early June. So,
okay?
and yeah, that's 90% of what we do is the wheat side. I mean, we have cattle, but most of what we do is the wheat.
So tell me about the one. I don't know anything about. I mean, I grew up working in a feed mill, right? And I think I've said this several times on the podcast. Like, I grew up working in a feed mill, I think starting at like 8 years old. And I was like, because I was annoying. And I think my mom wanted to just get me out of everybody's hair and make me do something that would wear me out. And it was like, I got a broom or a shovel and I got to throw things into the auger to put it get it all steamed and pressed and everything. And I did that until I graduated high school, but I was never out on the farm. I'm so ignorant when it comes down to the actual farming process. So I want to go on a 101 level of like, tell me about winter wheat, because this is a concept of my I've never worked around this. So and I'm sure I sound really ignorant to all of the farmers that listen to this, but I want to go from that level for those that don't know so that they don't have to sound like me and go, yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Well, I'm also like, even though I am generation 5, there's guys that know plenty more about wheat farming than I do. I'm 27 years old. Most times that I'm out on the farm, I'm just handed the keys to the combine or the tractor, and they're like, you go ahead. A lot of times, not understanding why or what we're doing. I'm just running the machine.
Yeah.
Um, but the goal is, so we've had a super dry summer. I mean, super dry, um, which is really, really tough. Uh, Whenever you're trying to plant your wheat, you have to chisel, you have to work the ground, chisel up all the weeds or anything that might have grown since the last wheat crop. And so you'll disc and chisel the ground, a few times before you plant, right before you plant. The ground can't be cement. The ground can't be super dry in order to work that ground, in order to get the seed in. So you need a little bit of moisture in the ground, not a ton, but just a little bit, in order for that ground to be workable. And then you come behind with with the drill, and you'll just drill wheat seed, hopefully, like I said before, the 1st of November. Well, we had a little bit of rain probably a month ago. Nothing crazy, like a half inch of rain, and the whole county just erupted. Everyone got in, like there were tractor jams. on every single intersection, everyone was going to, disc and chisel up their ground and plant the wheat as quickly as possible. And, after about a week and a half or 2 weeks of that, the ground hardened again, and everyone kind of put everything on pause until we get more rain in order to work the other properties that haven't been planted just yet. And we've still been, we've been sitting here waiting. I guess it's been more than a month. We've been waiting for a month and a half for another rain in order to get the rest of our ground worked and drilled. And it's kind of a tough situation because then, you want to get your wheat planted in order for the seed to germinate and sprout prior to, freezing temperatures. Well, here in December, there's going to be freezing temperatures, and everyone's sitting here waiting. If it doesn't rain until Thanksgiving, the last week in November, you're going to have to, or it may just not rain at all. And so you have to kind of balance or take an estimated guess. Do we just dust it in and we try and work up the ground as best as we can and just put the seed right over the hard ground and hope that it germinates even without moisture, or do we just wait and hope that we get some rain? So it's kind of a catch-22. A lot of people are just waiting to see what happens and praying for rain. So we could definitely use it.
So you're planting in November, harvesting around, you said May, June,
Yep, that's right. Into May, June.
and you get germination in the cold. Like how cold does it get? This is what I get to ask really dumb questions and
Oh,
not
that's
even feel
okay.
bad because I don't live in Oklahoma, so I don't know. How cold does it get there in the winter?
That's I mean, pretty cold. It's been 0 degrees here before. I mean, it snows here. It doesn't snow a lot, but it gets pretty cold in the wintertime. I mean, it's so it gets down below freezing, and the goal is to have a stand prior to that, a decent stand of wheat. Um, and like I said, a lot of guys are like our situation where we have 80% of the fields already planted. We did get that 80% of fields planted, but the 20%, everyone just kind of waiting. And I know guys that are, not sitting at that 80% mark. They still have 1,500 acres to plant, and they're really just we're not really sure what's going to happen other than wait and pray for rain. And if it doesn't start raining, then we're going to have to just it's called dusting in. You just
Yeah.
plant it without moisture.
So you get germination and growth despite the cold weather. Is like and like I like I said,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking
yeah.
questions.
That's the goal is you want to plant it before the freezing temperatures, and then it kind of you know not doesn't go dormant, but
Yeah,
it
it slows down.
slows down during the winter phases, and then February, March, April, that's whenever it really takes off.
Okay, okay. So this is just hanging out until the warm kicks back. Because I was like, man, is it
Pretty much.
not growing through Christmas, right? Like because grass stalls out, but you just have it ready to go because you couldn't you wouldn't be able to plant because the ground's frozen up until then. So you get it in the ground and ready to go. Okay, now I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, no, it was like 2 years ago before I started asking, okay, why do we even do what we do? I mean, there's other farmers out there. Does everyone grow wheat, or you know,
Well, because I would expect like a spring plant and a fall harvest
right?
is where I would expect because I see that a lot. Like the bales are all over the place here right now, and so it's like that's why I wanted to ask. It's like okay, but is Oklahoma routinely dry like this to where that's the tactic that you have to use?
Not really. Usually, I mean, this is one of the drier years we've had. So usually everything's fine. We've already had everything planted and we're moving right along. Some years you're dealing with too much water, and you don't want to go get out in the field and you know put your drill in the ground because your tractor is going to get stuck as it's trying to plant. So I mean, Oklahoma is just an interesting state because it's the way or where it is geographically. It has every single season. I mean, the winters are pretty dang cold and the summers are really hot. And, you know, we still get tropical storms that come into the, center of the US from Texas, from the Gulf of Mexico, and we get, cold fronts coming from the Rockies. So I mean, there's a whole slew of weather that we're always dealing with. We get tornadoes, obviously. I mean, if you've seen the new Twisters movie, actually, fun fact, I'm throwing this in there. The Twisters movie, the second one, was filmed not too far from our farm. Like you can see our farm in the background, which is pretty cool.
That's
Like,
for the scenery. I'm like, is your area a tornado area?
yeah, I mean, there's tons of tornadoes right around where we're at. It's like Tornado Alley. So,
Okay, so you are. That's what I was going to ask if you're in Tornado Alley because that's a whole different. The stuff that you go through back that like hurricanes and tornadoes are things that I don't deal with in the Northwest. Like
right.
I'm always joking that I'm scared of poisonous snakes and alligators, but like tornadoes and hurricanes, I would put higher than I would put a poisonous snake or an alligator. Just say that. I want to put that out there.
You got wildfires to deal with. I mean, that's pretty crazy too.
So the wildfires that we had an epic year because it was so dry. We had a really wet spring, and the fuel buildup was so high because of our grasses, right? Our grass grew up, 2, 3 feet, and then it dries out. So you've got a tinderbox throughout the entire state, and it went up like a match head. Actually, right across, I live in Boise, Idaho. It's the capital here, and we have foothills. There are mountains to the north and the whole thing went up just like a month ago. I sat there on my back porch and watched the whole thing burn down. It was a crazy year, but I would still take that over a tornado.
I mean, we used whenever I was in high school, we used to like load up and go chase tornadoes and like and
You
on our
did the
truck.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're well, if you grow up here, you're not necessarily scared of them. I guess they sound scary, but hurricanes are truly scary to me because you know, their their destruction path can be 3 hours,
Yeah, you
driving
can't drive
east.
away from it and get away. Like, oh, I'll just go a couple miles this way and I'm clear.
But, some of those like F5s, F4s that we've had, those tornadoes, those are super, super scary, but we've never had anything like that around here, knock on wood.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I don't want to make. I know I'm laughing, but I mean, like, because the hurricanes are just like what our country just went through hurricane wise. Like, I don't want to laugh.
yeah,
It's like beyond bad, but it's such an alien concept to me because I've just
right.
never been around. Like, I can't imagine a wall of just chaos coming at me like that. I don't think you could mentally check into that unless you saw it. It's just, and it's in the destruction they cause is just unfathomable. And we're talking about hurricanes now after winter wheat. Like that was
Oh yeah, yeah, we totally got off subject. Sorry about that. That's my doing.
no, you're good. You're good. I like it. This is why you do a podcast.
Yeah, every town or every just about every house in Oklahoma comes with you put in a storm shelter or a basement for tornadoes. So anyway, that's enough about tornadoes. Pretty cool. But yeah, no, we've it's been super dry. We're also in the process of weaning cattle right now, or weaning calves from mamas. So, we're out there trying to gather cattle and calves and sort them off. And it's just like a dust bowl because it's so dry. I
What
mean, just sand is blowing. There's a film of dust on everything outside.
when is your calving season? Like what like for I mean, I guess different outfits calve at
Yeah.
different times depending on strategy, but like for the most part, do you get like that spring calving like do you go do you try to time it for the later in the spring? It's hard to time, but
Yeah. No, it is definitely hard to time. It depends on the outfit. I mean, a lot of guys will aim for the spring to be the calving season. Earlier usually is just fine. I mean, if they time it February or
yeah,
January, it's whenever we do get freezing temperatures, it'll be for, a day or two or three.
okay,
You're not
that
going to have
February time frame. Because I
yeah,
was just
your herd isn't going to, freeze to death out here, but
yeah.
uh, so we're right now the calves we're pulling off are pretty big. So they're probably, February, March, they're pretty big calves. So
Okay. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that. Like, actually, my director of marketing here, Kelly Valderrama, her husband runs ranches, and they were talking about building strategies for not having a winter calving. And we run into it up here because we go way below zero, and it's like they get stuck in the afterbirth, and that freezes, and it's a bad situation for calves. So I
Yeah.
didn't know, I didn't like since you're talking about calves, I figured I would ask you if you had a strategy around that for timing it.
No, I mean I think they kind of know themselves. It's just like deer and rutting. I mean, they
Yeah.
know when to do it and when to not. And all you do is you go out there and you check and make sure that everyone, every calf is paired up with a mama at least. And a lot of times whenever you have twins born, the mom will sometimes reject a calf, one of the two. She'll choose one, so you'll try,
Yeah.
and a lot of those twins will go and bottle feed and all that. So, but right now, yeah, we're just sorting them off, getting them off of mamas because put them on hay and get them, just separated. So um, it's just been dusty though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy dusty out there. If you could hear outside of our house right now, I mean, the wind is going crazy. So
So
anyway,
what goes into, I mean, we talked about disking and getting seeds in the ground. Does anything else go into at like actually like winterizing for a weed outfit? Like is it, what's sort of the processes that you want to go through?
I mean, some certain guys will. I have a client that he limes all of his properties. Like he'll apply lime, and that will make the ground more basic, more susceptible, or not susceptible. Just a healthier environment for that seed to germinate. If it's a super rough ground or super rough soil, you can fertilize. A lot of money goes into fertilization. Um, or fertilizer. I mean, fertilizer is very expensive right now, but um, a lot of guys will do that. And but there's not really anything winter wheat necessarily needs for winterizing, getting winterized. It's pretty sustainable throughout the winter by itself, as long as you can get a sprout um, before the super cold temperatures come in, then it'll survive. So
Gotcha. And then like tool prep, getting stuff put away, that kind of stuff. I mean, like total outfit wise, what do y'all have going on around this time of year? And I know it's getting ready for hunting and all that stuff too.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you just want to, if you have the room, we're putting everything in the barns. And, right now we're actually building another barn, that's exciting. I mean, it's a good time to be building a barn, I guess. But uh, no, yeah, putting everything in the barns and just making sure that it's all good to go, and then focusing on deer season. I mean, we start our deer prep in June usually.
So
Certain
it's like you
guys,
harvest and then prep for deer, like
yeah,
back to back.
yeah, or sometimes they're at the exact same time, and you got to
Okay.
ask yourself where your priorities lie. If you're gonna, like my dad, he's always wanting to get the fields planted before deer season starts, because he does not, once it's deer season, if he has a buck that he's going after, he does not want to have to deal with, spending 3 or 4 days out on the tractor planting the wheat. So
Yeah, because you can't exactly take breaks once you start that. Like
yeah,
you yeah.
you got to go, you know. But so we start prepping for deer season right around June, and that entails just feeding. Certain guys will feed year round. In Oklahoma, you can feed corn, food plots. You can put in, like, we put in shooting lanes and we plant corn. We used to do food plots, but we were having a lot of wild boar come and tear up our food plots, and it was just kind of a waste of time until we killed down some of that boar population. Um, but yeah, just feeding and getting camp set up, and yeah, checking checking trail cameras every single day whenever you wake up. And yeah, we started all that in probably July, August. Um, and yeah, now is the time. Now is bow season. Everyone's out there. We just had youth rifle, so everyone's taking their kids out, and my little brother He's 17, so it's his last youth rifle weekend. They'll have a weekend just set aside for the children before, rifle season opens up. And so it's always cool to see the kids get out and, go hunting for the first time. And some kids kill giant deer, because no one's
Oh,
been out.
absolutely.
Yeah, no one's been able to hunt these deer yet. So it's a cool time. It's my favorite time of the year for sure.
And then I can speak to you just posted this, right? That's what I just saw, that you had this on social media, that is your little brother, right?
Yeah, yeah, little
Uh,
brother. He was his first or his last youth rifle season, so he's 17, and he went and he shot a doe just for meat in the freezer, and because we have nothing. I mean, we've got maybe two 4-year-old deer that you really want to let them mature until they're 6 or 7 if you can. So unless a neighbor kills them, they're gonna survive for the next year or two.
yeah,
So
yeah. And so in Oklahoma wise, like you're not right. I'm every time I think I know something about the Midwest or the East Coast, like I'm learning new things, right? So like we just had there's a property that we just got in national land in Missouri that's high fenced, and it was at like with just monster like just Franken deer, right? But it's getting placed in that because of it's high fence isn't really a thing in Missouri, so it's like it's more of an anomaly to have high fence. Is that even a thing in Oklahoma? Does that run very much or
I think, yeah, there are high fences in Oklahoma. They're not they're not very common.
okay?
That's definitely more common in Texas from what I
Texas is
understand.
like the thing, like that's where that is.
Yeah. Oklahoma, like you're almost shunned if you kill a deer in a high fence. It's like, oh, come on. It's still very cool to like see that. Like I know a guy, he's got, you know, they go and they tranquilize all the deer, and he'll take pictures once they're, tranked on the table,
Yeah,
and these specimen. I mean, it's amazing, like going into the genetic side of it and being able to alter that, and be able to selectively breed different deer. But it's not a thing here in Oklahoma. You try and we'll cull bucks, whenever you have a gene that you don't necessarily want reproduced. But from what I understand, a lot of the antler genes, quote unquote, come from the doe. Like more than 50% come from the doe, and there's no way to tell, what genetic, you know, traits she's carrying for antlers. So
right.
it's interesting.
I just had to, like I said, I love asking silly questions because it's how I learn. But I didn't realize that Texas is like the high fence place that you run into a lot, and I just didn't. And for those of you on the West Coast that are listening, this is you want to attract deer to your property. It's a mix between fishing and hunting, right? Where like you're trying to pull things in and lure things in to
Right.
your area, as to where like you and I were just talking before we started, like West Coast is like getting out and running and finding it versus pulling it in. I mean, we call things in and stuff, but it's not like you're not going to find a lot of food plots out here. Like
Right.
you get
Yeah.
lucky if you know somebody that has some ag, because then that will pull them in invariably, but that's not as common. It's like we're like 70% public land because you can't farm a cliff face. So it's like it's one of those, you know, it's learning. We're learning.
No, I mean that's exact. You hit it right on the head. It's trying to pull something in and then keep it around, um, for the goal would be for the next 3 years until it develops into a fully matured deer. Um, if you have food, water, and shelter on that property, the only reason they would ever potentially leave would be for rut. While white-tailed deer rut super heavily and will run, miles and miles a day, looking for a mate. And so the goal is to have enough does on your property, but not too many does because you don't want it to become a
You want your buck
competition
to doe
sport.
ratio thing going on. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want, everyone to be competing for food or not enough water or not enough shelter. And so it's an interesting balance because there really are no high fences, or there's very few high fences in Oklahoma. And it's pretty fun, yeah, especially if you get to know your neighbors and they all have the same goal, whenever it comes to managing the deer population. Most of the time, you're not going to have that. You're going to have a neighbor that shoots just about everything, and the goal is to just, if you have that situation,
Don't be
just
that guy. Don't
yeah,
be that guy.
don't be the neighbor. I had to tell my dad that that was a few years ago. We were like, man, the neighbor, he's gonna shoot this as soon as it comes onto his property, but we just can't shoot it. Like, let him shoot it if he's gonna shoot it, but let's let it walk. And we all agreed that, unless we're shooting a buck for culling, we're gonna shoulder mount every single deer that we, it's got to be pretty significant to get shoulder mounted around here. So anyway, it's a super fun time. I wish I had bigger deer on camera, but I'll just resort to the hunting stories of the past this year because I'm not very hopeful that I'll shoot a buck this year. So
Yeah, and so we were just, and I guess, I like, we were planning out the podcast, right? We're talking about winterizing for weed and all that kind of stuff, and that's part of the conversation. But we also just kind of started deviating. I think that's part of the nature of the podcast, and I think we're going into hunting now. But we were talking about just before this of like when you have a lot of private land, you want to manage for deer. But then I was laughing about my hunt this year was, you know, 10 miles of grueling hiking up cliff faces and stuff. And it's like you get to that, there's no management out here. It's public land. You're running
right.
around hoping you bump into something, and then you you're either going to take the shot that you get or you're just going home with tag soup. And so like I ended up I got a lot of crap from a few friends of mine back east, like, the deer you got isn't very big. Like, that's the only thing I saw with the antlers. After what I did, it's gonna fall. And so you have to like, there's different styles in different areas. It's just everyone's got their own little nuances. But when you get to where it's a lot of private land, you want to manage and you pass those and you let them go to the next year. It's just the thing.
Yeah, I just wish we would have more private land. I mean, the goal would be to have, 2,000 consecutive acres and just no neighbors in sight where you could really keep them there. But, even half a section just by itself, I mean, we use that half section only for deer hunting. It's still, and I don't know if they have sections up in Idaho, to be honest with you, but it's 335 acres. So it's a pretty significant piece of land, and
Yeah.
it's still like you're still dealing with neighbors. You're still, deer are still moving from property to property. So I mean, it's difficult, but it's fun. It's part of the game, and that's why you don't show too many people the pictures of your trophy buck whenever you do have one, especially if you have guys hunting around you. It's like they may hear about it from person to person and say, well, I heard Dillon Smith's got the biggest buck in Kingfisher County on his property. I'm going to see if I can't get that lease just to the north of him. And I mean, it happens. It 100% happens here.
Oh no,
And
we'll hunt around sanctuary land. So especially elk will migrate into like cornfields and stuff, especially during the season, just to get away from all the pressure. And so if you throw up your OnX and you take a hike through the mountains and get over the pass to, where you think a pathway is, and you're like, I might catch one going back and forth. Like there is definitely that. It's just that there's so much public land, so a lot of it is just getting away from roads and getting away from other hunters and cars, right? So it's like, or people in UTVs, you want to get away from that as far as possible, and that's usually where the animals are. But it's not as much like I own acreage so that I can hunt. That doesn't exist. It's like if you own acreage, you're farming it, and then if you
right,
get mixed use out of it, then so be it. But
right.
yeah, so it's a little different on that level. Um, Tell me a little bit about, so you've been you've been doing the land sales thing for a year now. When I talked to you, you had an awesome story. What was it? You pulled a sale off of something that shouldn't have been. You had like a mystery caller, and some lady was,
Yeah,
you thought it was a phone scam, right? Like you
definitely.
came from that, and now you've been at this for a year. So how are sales going right now in Oklahoma?
Man, honestly, the majority of the business that I'm doing, uh, I'd say 80% is current operations, whether that's, you know, wheat or cattle. That's 80% of Oklahoma's, farm values or farm output is wheat and cattle. And so what I'm doing is I'm working with current operators trying to find them properties neighboring their current property. And that's
So
really
expansion,
all
right?
that's, yeah, with interest rates being high, um, if it's not near a current operation, it's not bringing the value that we've seen in years past. Um, I will say one thing that's selling quite a bit is the, 60 acres and less properties. Um, there's a guy here in Oklahoma. His name's Jason Ramsey, and he's a lender for Rule First, and he kind of specializes, or he has a very defined niche in the 5 to 40 acre parcel that they potentially will build on one day. And everyone is wanting that right now. Everyone's wanting 5 to 40 acres outside of city limits, and they're paying a premium for that. That stuff is all moving very quickly. So you have a lot of guys looking at subdividing and especially around certain suburban areas, and just looking for their 40 acres outside. Like the amount of people that would buy 40 acres right now around where I'm from, or 20 acres with blacktop road access is insane. I mean, everyone's looking for that right now.
Yeah.
But
So is that so that's for so you're talking about either land that is larger and getting subdivided to smaller parcels. Is this for residential kind of stuff? Like
yes,
this is
yeah,
just like not hunting land, but this is just I want to get out of the city and get my rural life.
right, yeah, because the recreational stuff, the hunting properties have not, with interest rates being 3 times what they were, or 2 times what they were, 3 or 4 years ago, the hunting properties are still selling, but they're not selling like they used to.
It's a
I
luxury.
mean,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's a luxury, 9% or 8.5% interest rate is a heck of a lot of difference per month. You're paying almost triple per month than a 3 to 2. So, um,
And that's one to point out is and this is again for those of you those that are listening that don't get to ask the questions. I want to make sure that I get the questions. Is uh land loans are more than what you see with a residential loan. Like if you get it, like you buy a house in a neighborhood, your real estate loan, your interest rate is going to be a lot less. Land loans, one, it's hard to get them. Two, it's you don't get as much coverage out of them. I mean, you can get it to build on, but you are still running high risk to not get the same kind of loan because land is associated, undeveloped land kind of stuff. And so when Dillon here is talking about the interest rates, some of them might not sound familiar if you're looking at residences. You're going to pay more when it comes down to the loans on those kind of areas, right? I just in your area, I'm wondering if that's familiar or
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I had people ask me whenever I first got into this, is like, am I going to be able to get a first time home buyer's loan at the same rate as I would buy 160 acres? And the answer is, unless you're going through the Farm Service Agency, first time farmers program, probably not.
yeah.
No, if you were to go and try and get an ag loan of for 160 acres, you're looking at pretty high interest rate. So that's why only the current operations are expanding right now, because it's the input cost is so ridiculously high to get into farming, or any agricultural endeavor, whether you want to go into ranching or whatever, to be able to pull 160 acres worth of money out. Where I'm at, you're looking at 640,000 minimum. You can get it for cheaper, but you're looking at about 640,000 per 160 acres, plus the amount of money it's going to cost for the cattle. So I don't know. It's a good, it's a stable thing. Property values are tapering. They're not necessarily increasing super drastically or decreasing at all. They've kind of tapered off, and the people that have the property, that have the operation established, they're continuing to expand, and people are looking to get out of the cities. That's the majority of the business that we've been doing this year. So
So you've been at this for, I mean, like I said, like the last time you were on here, like a year ago, brand new agent.
yeah,
Now a year in. At the beginning, I think you were kind of like going back and forth of like, man, am I ever going to pick anything up? And now you started rolling through quite a few sales. You've started picking up
Yeah.
business in your area. As somebody who is working with the buying and selling of land, has your philosophy changed since you started? I think that's a good question to ask. Like, has your mindset changed?
Yeah, man. I mean, I've learned so much in the past year and a half. Like my Facebook memory popped up today, and it was the first 160 I had sold uh, this time last year. And to just think that that was only a year ago uh, is really crazy because I've learned a ton in this past year. But maybe my philosophy hasn't changed. I've learned a ton. I know that, I was real estate's kind of like, hurry up and wait. You can do certain things each day, but unless it's a great deal for someone, there's no salesman aspect to this. It's just you do the same thing every single day. You market yourself, you market your properties, you stay disciplined in that, and properties will move. And it's just I guess what the biggest thing that I learned was the discipline, and this being a self-paced position, but also number two is the consistency, I guess, is you stay at it, whether properties are selling left and right or properties are no one's buying anything. You just can stay consistent at it. And so my philosophy, I don't know, has changed. I've just learned a lot about how to how to be successful at this, how to serve your clients as best as you possibly can, and make this a full-time career.
And you spoke to this as it not, you said it's not a sales thing. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so I mean it's just like there's no pitch that you have, no matter what how slick of a tongued guy you, a silver tongued fox or whatever you are. There's no sales pitch that's going to convince anyone to buy land. The land sells itself or it doesn't. It's either overpriced or there's nothing you can do to spruce up a property essentially. And that was something that I learned pretty quickly was if this makes sense on paper to a producer in their operation, then it's going to get bought up. But if it doesn't, there's nothing you can say or do that's going to, you're not a salesman. So it's not like selling a car where you're like, oh, you need the V8 twin turbo, fuel injected leather seats. That's not how
You
this.
can't pitch your sale for the next week either. Hey, this property is 50% off next week and next week only.
The only thing that you can do is, show up when you say you're going to show up, get the documents to whoever needs them, and do your due diligence on the backside whenever it comes time to do the title work and communicating with title offices and real estate attorneys. But there's no sales side of this. I guess whenever I thought going into it, it was going to be super sales based. Like people called me a salesman, and I was like, well, I haven't really sold anything. I mean, it's because it's a pretty proper, the properties are, I'm just the guy that's got the sign out in front that takes the phone calls. That's all it is.
Right. Well, and then like, you with sellers, it's going to be the biggest thing is I just did a actually with talked to Wayne Dunson over there in Texas, and we talked about the process of getting the price to market the first time is the single most important thing that the agent has going on, and
Mhm.
the highest value that you provide, and the most important piece, because all things set aside, most of the sites that everybody puts land on similar.
Right.
I like our website, I know for a fact, does a pretty monstrous job, but that doesn't, that helps, but the land itself is, and the price that it is, like, that's soup to nuts. Is that even a word?
Right.
Did I just make that
Right.
up? I've heard that before. I swear I've heard that before. Anyways, those are the big deals with it. And how many properties do you currently have listed on market?
Uh, 15,
You have
15. So
15 open
yeah,
listings right now on market,
yep,
which is a
15
pretty
total.
darn good, like, you've come from, I think I might get some business next month, to that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to make this my full-time job, which I mean, I was making it my full-time job last year, but was I, I I
Was
was
it
a
actually
lot.
putting food on the table?
No, no, I was calling my banker like, man, give me one more month. Like, but no, it's finally to the point where I'm doing, I have enough workload every single day to spend 8 hours to 12 hours, a lot of days working every single day. So I'm super thankful that, for National Land, for Mark Lewis, my broker, Clay Baxter, those guys that have helped me and kind of helped me form this into a fully functioning business instead of just a side gig that, I was really passionate about. So got some big things coming up we've got our office in Crescent. We're finishing up the epoxy on the table and we're going to start having, 1031 meetings there and different different meetings. Got my first intern coming on in summer and this summer, and he's looking at getting licensed in Oklahoma. So it's big things happening. I'm super appreciative of it. So it's been great.
So tell me, like, I really want to. I'm steering this off the rails now. We're not even on time. We're not talking
I'm here for it.
weed anymore. I'm totally fine with that. But I want so for for those listening, because I know that there is a lot of agents that are contemplating a career with land specifically, or are new in the industry. You specifically have started from it, like exactly what we just said. You started out like a year ago, kind of like, okay, maybe I'm trying, I'm gonna give this a go. And now it's like you're kind of balling. And so what's the 1 year plan? How did you do it? What did you do to grow your business in your area and acquire listings and feed the family kind of thing?
That's a
Big
great.
question. Big question. Putting you on the spot, man.
So it's so multifaceted, but I had to allow myself to, this sounds so cheesy, but I had to fully allow myself to fail um, and continue to try new things, even though they weren't working. Um, and I also learned I had to stay consistent in those failings um, because I think that, you know, this is a long term game, essentially. You know, no one's going to sell their land, their most valuable asset. They're not going to trust some guy who's 25 years old who just got out of college to sell their most valuable asset for, X commission, who has no experience, who isn't going to be able to guide them through the process at all. Um, and so what I did whenever I was first starting out is I was like faking it till you make it. So, acting like I knew what I was
Try to
talking
puff
about.
up. You got to puff up. You try to
I
make it.
got I got shut down quick. Like the guys that know what they're doing just heard me, heard my ego come out, puff my chest up like, "Oh yeah, so here's what you do." And they know immediately. They're like, "Okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's move on." So I had to take a, hard look in the mirror at myself and just learn number one, to ask, to reach out to the older guys above you that have more experience to actually get the right answer for your clients. Um, I had to stay consistent in my marketing. You know, that is, you're not going to trust the newest guy, but you may trust him a little bit more if you know that he's doing it as a full-time job and he's doing it every single day of the week, full, all in. And he's done it for, every single day of the week for the past 6 months. Just consistent effort, the ability to get, to learn from your mistakes and recognize your mistakes. Um, and yeah, just being able to starve a little bit. That's it's a hard career to get into, and it's a good thing whenever it is a good thing, but it's going to take a long time to learn. And I don't know how guys do it without the the brokerage support, without the mentorship. It's really difficult not knowing what you're doing and not having anyone around you that knows what they're doing. So I would say if someone's looking in getting into this, find a mentor, find someone who knows what they're doing to lean on. Understand that it's a long process, but all you can do is serve your clients the best you possibly can. That's all it comes down to at the end of the day. The way that you do that is you answer their questions honestly. If you can't get the answer, go find someone that can. And uh, yeah, that's really all it is. I mean, stay at it. Even whenever it's really slow, even whenever the phone's not ringing, stay at it because, eventually someone's going to need you to sell their land or sell their property or help them purchase the property, and they're going to need a professional. So, you know, also learn. I mean, whenever you're not busy, whenever you don't have a ton of business, there's so many resources out there on YouTube and LandU, RLI, they have so many resources available for younger guys. There's so many classes out there that you can take and learn and actually know what you're talking about instead of just, stumbling your way through it. So that's what
You
I'd say.
spoke to the mentorship. Do you feel like that's I the interactions that I have company wide, national land, because we have, over 100 offices now, 400 some agents. And that's kind of the story that I get. It's like, and we built that, we ingrained that into the company philosophy, but it's also on an office level that you want to find that. I don't know, that's a point to make it's a pride thing, right? Like you're talking about that. And I love to hear that because the level of every single agent in this company talks about calling across state lines, talking to other agents. Like everyone's always helping everyone, which is kind of rare. And I love to hear that in your situation. But I want to ask you about the marketing side of it because I'm a marketer. Like, what's been useful for you, and what's been the most effective, and like what's been the means that you've utilized?
So I come from a super small town where just about everyone knows everyone. Um, so it's not like I'm introducing myself to a completely cold audience, as the marketer would say. These are warm leads. They already know who I am and what I
Yeah.
do because they've seen me on Facebook or they've seen me at church. Um, the number one thing that I've been doing is direct mail. The social media marketing's huge. I've got a newsletter that I do monthly, where I just keep people updated on what's available and what are the trends in certain markets, and so as a marketer yourself, there's a whole slew of things that I do that all slowly aggregate to it's not just one click and suddenly someone's ready to use you as their agent. They have to see you a few times and maybe in a few different avenues. So
And you spoke to not having a cold audience because you came up in a small town, and I, I think you might have led a different childhood than I did because I find that to be a more difficult audience because they're like, I remember when you were a screw off speeding in front of my house. Like,
yeah, I mean that's absolutely true. Like I've gotten more business outside of my hometown than inside my hometown. But
yeah, yeah, because they know what you were like when you were younger. It's like, I'm not doing business with you.
yeah, they still see you as the 17-year-old kid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that I do that the marketing team helps out a lot on. The guys in my and gals in my office that we don't necessarily work together on every project, but having them in the back pocket to call whenever you need uh, you need some answers or you need some advice on how to handle certain situations. That's really huge. I mean, even Greg and Marla, like they're the kindest people if you've met the Fords.
Yes.
And earlier this year, I was like, man, this is getting tough, guys. And Marla was just like, hey, like this is what we do, and you keep at it, bud. And I'm so glad to have them, on the team, and so it's a whole slew of things that help you get off your feet. But um, I wouldn't narrow it down to just one thing. But you have to do all of those things consistently. So
I
anyway,
think Yeah, no, it's really cool to hear. I like and it's good to touch base, especially after you started, a year ago. And I don't want to make it sound like, oh, this young rookie started wet behind the ears. Like you had a lot of experience. You got 5 generations back in agriculture. It's not like you're going in clueless. Like ag, land, all those kind of like you had all these things going for you. But jumping into a new career is always difficult. So it's like it's good to see the support network working, the marketing working, and the expertise building. And not just that, but like going from a place of like maybe to a place of this is what I do. Um, it's a cool change of pace.
I'll,
Uh,
I'll also comment real quick. I'm sorry to cut you off.
no, jump in, cut me off. Everybody should.
Majority of the clients that we're working with, especially here in Oklahoma for sure, are older guys. I mean, they're, 65 to 85-year-old, buyers and sellers of farmland. Um, and as a 27-year-old guy that can't grow a beard, uh, you're already at a disadvantage. So if you walk up to them and you're like, "Hey, I'm a young guy that can't grow a beard, but I want to sell your land," they're like, "Okay, well, yeah, like how about you just go and tame that bull real quick and then come back and tell me how it goes." And they're like, they're going to be like, "Get out of here, dude." But if you can come to them and say, "I've got a ton of support behind me, you know, on the social media side, on the technology side, on the digital or the print marketing side, expertise wise, I've got, guys that, the Mark Lewises of the world that have sold land in 5 or 6 or I don't even know how many states Mark sold land in, but there's guys
Mark,
like
I
that
think he's
all
licensed in
over.
all 50 states as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
there's guys like that all over national land that, I got a call from Casey Reynolds the other day. I think he's out of Virginia. And like we sat there and talked, and I've never even been to Virginia, but cool. I mean, anyway, I mean you're a lot more, you have a lot more backing, or you have a lot more, you can be a little bit more audacious. You can have a little bit more audacity when approaching those farmers or landowners that instead of you having a disadvantage, yes, you're not as experienced as the guys that are probably you're competing with, but you can, you can offer something, for that. You have the new tricks, you have the new technology, you have the support. So that really kind of levers it or leverages that. So,
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And building that into a sales tactic, and I'm saying sales as in just like pitching yourself,
right,
that stuff matters because, like you said, as a landowner, you're selling the most valuable thing that you own. That you
right.
want to know that it's got. I want to know the person I'm working with has maximum support to be able to do that. And so, like yeah, it's good to know. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so and again, I've already run you way over as far as time. But we got talking hunting stories before this started. So I mean, it happens. Um,
Yeah.
Wanted to close out with, are you hunting this year? You mentioned you haven't had anything on camera. Are you going to get it done?
No, I'm not. I don't have plans to get done this year. I may shoot a coal buck if one comes around, but right now we don't have anything, worth going, and it's super hot right now. Like it was 90 degrees this week.
Was
And
it?
so,
Oh, that's hot, hot. Okay.
going and sitting out in the wind and the heat is not worth it just yet.
No.
Uh, Rut changes everything here in less than 2 weeks. It'll cool down and the deer will be rutting around. You never know what can happen then. Deer can come in from 30 miles away and be on your property. But I mean, I'll definitely be hunting with my family, but I'm not going to be hunting in order to. I'm not hunting a specific deer. Usually, whenever I hunt whenever I'm going hunting, I have one or two deer on the kill list that I'm trying to figure out where he eats, sleeps, and breathes. That's not the case this year. I'm just going to hang out with dad, hang out with my little brother. Going to go spend some nights under the stars and in deer camp. So it's probably going to be better for me that way. Honestly, a little bit more relaxing.
You know what? Those are my favorites. Like those, I took somebody on a trip a while back to teach them how to fly fish, and we took a trip to a river up here in the Northwest, and we're driving along, and this probably been about an hour, and this guy's, like everybody that's done this knows the routine where you get in the car and you start talking about everything that's going on, and like an hour goes by and you're talking about family, kids, life, old age, career, and this guy's like, I just told you my whole life story. I'm like, there you go. Now you're fishing. Like,
Yeah.
but like hunting, fishing, it's like, that's it. Like, it's that part of it that is and if you're relaxed and you're not so fired up to go kill something or catch something, like that's the thing. Like, that's the hunt and the fish.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the, like this past weekend, my dad and I, we just sat around the campfire. We didn't even go out and hunt because it was we knew we were going to be tracking a deer if he shot one, but we just sat by the campfire, and that's where it's at. Taking your little brother out hunting and just going to spend some time away from cell phone service and all that. So not too much time.
Not too much time. No, you got to do business.
Yeah, that's right. Can't miss too many phone calls. So, but anyway.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I'm gonna let you get back to work and everything. I think the first time I think you were pretty nervous the first time we were on here. I think you were like, you were daunted a little bit. We had to check it a couple times and calm you down and everything. But like, seeing the person sitting here that was sitting there a year ago is like a confident person doing a great business and making things very successful. So it's very cool to see, man. So I love it.
Thank you, Mac. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on, man.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. So I hope hopefully talk to you again here soon, and yeah, take it easy and enjoy the fall.
All right, I'll see you later. You take care.
This concludes episode number 115 for the National Land Realty Podcast, touching base with Dillon Smith 1 year after his start in Oklahoma and discussing what has brought him success in a short amount of time in land real estate sales. Now, you can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.